didn't know what was happening to me. Thought I was gonna die.
He kept saying to us, I have no idea what this is.
I've never seen this before. I've never heard of this before.
We don't know what's wrong with you.
Dark and not seeing any light of recovery.
We have, I think, a horrible epidemic. When enough people are sick, it's going to be who's answering for this, what did you know, when did you know it?
What kind of a breakdown or series of breakdowns in the medical system can lead to a setting where you have an illness and people walking into their average doctor's offices may or may not be likely to get effective treatment for it?
I would never have thought that a bacteriological infection producing the havoc that it produces can become so politicized. The truth can be so brutally distorted.
When we moved to where we are now, and the people we bought the house from said to us, be careful of Lyme disease, and then we met all the neighbors. Every house, for sure, had at least one case, and many houses had, all of the family had been infected. All of them were sick.
Are you able to stand up, honey? All right, I'm going to shut this off so we can take you back in the house, okay?
Good, good.
All the articles basically state that this really isn't that big of an epidemic and that it doesn't really do that much to your body, and that it's just a very easy, quick cure. A couple weeks of antibiotics and you're good to go. Obviously, those people haven't actually seen what it does.
Pain, pain, pain. Relentless pain. No one would believe it. I said to my best friend, I said, look at me right now. Look at me. What do I look like? And he said, you look great. I said, you cannot imagine the pain in my body right now.
My case was sort of cut and dry. A, I was a park ranger. B, I knew exactly when I was bitten and I saved the tick and brought it to my doctor. C, I had a red rash. And D, I had a rather classic case of neurological Lyme disease with all the usual trimmings. But I brought all that to the doctors, and it took 5 doctors to figure it out.
I don't think you're sick. I don't think there's anything wrong with you.
Everybody's telling you it's in your head. You know it's not in your head.
We don't think there's anything wrong with you.
There is nothing wrong.
We've done your labs. Your labs are fine. You're fine.
There's no medicine for someone like you. You're an attractive girl, and obviously, you don't feel like you're getting enough attention. This is my adrenaline now. So if you want to see me get worse, I'll just do one length, not even a lap. Half a length. I'll have to be hauled out. Like the catch of the day.
She's become very, very good at hiding symptoms. It doesn't matter how bad she is. I mean, the girl cannot get out of bed, and her catchphrase is, "I'll do it myself."
I can do it myself.
That's right. I mean, she can do it. I can go grab something in 30 seconds, or she can take 4 hours to crawl across the house, and she will not let me go get it.
I know what my bad days are like, and I do my best to try to prevent them. So to know that I could get worse, that's not something I'm looking forward to. The unknown is pretty scary.
I live on the west side of the northern Sierra Nevada in California. I'm a writer now. I was a park ranger for 21 years until I got Lyme disease and had to quit. It began with profound fatigue. Then I developed stabbing and shooting pains. I started having vision problems, blurred vision, and then came the memory loss and the cognitive problems. And once I drove to my office, a place I'd commuted to for 13 years, and stopped on the way home and called my wife on the cell phone and told her that I wasn't sure I could find my way home. I just wasn't in good enough shape to drive. Couldn't remember how to do it. If I hadn't had any kids, I might have killed myself. My life was so uncomfortable to be in that I don't know that I would have wanted to be here had I not had stronger family connections, you know, kept me here.
I'm an event producer for U2 shows on tour. I get to do the VIP parties for all the band's guests. I've loved this band since I was a kid. I mean, I had the freaking personalized license plate. Everybody's in survival mode on tour. It's insane. It's completely insane. The hardest thing is everybody thinks I'm normal. At home, I was in bed feeling just so sick and just searing pain. It got worse and worse, and I started having pretty bad neurological problems. I got to the point of just do or die, just go for something instead of sitting in my room, rotting in my bed.
Over the last 12 years, I've been diagnosed off and on with lupus,
chronic fatigue syndrome, Crohn's disease,
Fibromyalgia,
lupus, fibromyalgia, MS,
fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis.
Doctors thought I had ADD.
Chronic fatigue syndrome,
Parkinson's disease,
syphilis, multiple sclerosis,
MS to ALS to nothing.
They were pulling anything out of their hat they could think of.
Doctor after doctor after doctor after doctor after doctor, misdiagnosing her, putting her on some medication that didn't work. I just thought we were both nuts.
There's evidence that Lyme disease has been around for a long time, but here in the United States, it was the early 1970s when a Connecticut mom looked around her neighborhood and noticed something was not quite right.
Well, I was frightened, really, and doctors, were insinuating that it was all in my head. In the 70s, we were all having strange symptoms, headaches and stiff neck and swollen joints. As I looked around the neighborhood, I realized that there were others that were having swollen knees and rashes. Finally, when our symptoms just weren't going away, I decided to call the state health department and report this mysterious disease that seemed to be coming to our area.
In 1981, I discovered the causative agent of Lyme disease. My discovery was published in the Science magazine and considered as a breakthrough.
We didn't know how to treat it. It was a newly described germ. It looked like syphilis under the microscope, but that's as far as we got. We also didn't have any idea how widespread it was, how much suffering it caused, and the controversies to come.
Lyme disease is caused by bacteria, the Borrelia spirochete. It's spiral-shaped, so it can drill through tissue and get into just about any part of the body. The most common form of transmission is through the bite of several species of tick, commonly known as deer ticks.
There's bacteria inside the tick, so when it bites you, it just starts sucking up your blood, like Dracula would do. While it's like sucking in the blood, the bacteria will be released, and then it just gets into the blood, and it gets into your heart, and then your brain, and then you have Lyme disease.
It seemed like for everything that I'd read about it that it was harmful, there was always something I'd read about it that said, oh, no, no, no. It's actually very easy to cure. Well, when I saw this doctor, you know, he said, you've got a long road ahead of you. I'm Mandy, take you, Sean.
To be my husband.
To be my husband.
To have and to hold.
To have and to hold.
In sickness and in health.
In sickness and in health.
To love and to cherish.
To love and to cherish.
Until death do us part.
Until death do us part.
It's not the pain
Husband and wife.
that excites me.
There's no difference in how I feel about her now and how I felt about her then.
We'll see if he says that when I'm starting to get treatment. I'm all
Oh no, it's just the nearness.
I think like a lot of people who've had Lyme disease, I've been led to wonder why it's not being treated with the kind of seriousness that it deserves. This is not a rare disease. It's thought of as a rare disease, but in fact, there's nothing controversial about the fact that it's the most common vector-borne disease in America today. It is far, far more common and much more dangerous to the average American than West Nile virus is. The Centers for Disease Control report over 20,000 new cases each year. Yet because the reporting rate is so low and the disease so often overlooked, they admit that the actual number may be over 200,000, making Lyme more prevalent than AIDS. Since 1991, the rate of cases has doubled, yet government agencies and the medical establishment seem to be downplaying the problem.
The number of cases of Lyme disease went way up in this country last year, up by 41% to be exact.
A record number of Lyme disease cases have been reported in the state of Maryland this year.
New cases of Lyme disease are up 50% in Massachusetts.
The CDC admits there are at least 10 times as many cases out there.
The entire neighborhoods and whole families are being debilitated by this infectious disease.
Health officials are now calling it an epidemic.
I think there are hundreds of thousands of people out there who have Lyme disease who have no idea they have Lyme disease. There are doctors out there who aren't looking for it.
He just kept saying, you don't have Lyme.
You don't have Lyme disease.
You don't have Lyme.
He told me that there was no such thing as Lyme disease in North Carolina.
Lyme disease doesn't really exist in Tennessee. You can't have Lyme disease because you haven't been to these areas in Long Island or this area in Connecticut.
I've been told it isn't Lyme hundreds and hundreds of times.
Are you sure you have it? How do you know you have it? Why do you say you have it?
He slammed his fist on the table and said, "Don't talk to me about Lyme anymore."
It is a national health crisis that is completely and totally being ignored and squashed. What is going on?
We have a major problem with this disease. We have a major problem finding out who's got it, treating them effectively and quickly. It's far more expensive to treat in late stages and less effective than it is early. And yet we don't respond early enough with many of the patients, and many of them get to late stage and they're sick for the rest of their lives.
Okay, quiet. No barking. No barking. Okay. I love you, my girl. I'll see you later.
I'm a medical doctor with a specialty in pathology. I'm a general pathologist, but I'm doing molecular studies now in connection with my 20 years of researching Lyme disease. The research is something that I do after I've done my day's work, and if I have energy left, I work into the night. So I do the research on my own time. Okay, hi, Travis. My lab assistant, Travis. This part of the cellar is mine. The rest of the cellar is for other things in our life, like Christmas ornaments. This is my microscope. I've owned this for 20 years. It's a research microscope. My work is building bridges between what I can see under the microscope and what is going on in the human body. The orthodox, conventional view is that the bacteria that causes Lyme disease doesn't stay around very long inside the human body. That will be disproven. And we will enter an arena now where long-term chronic infections will be embraced by the medical community, and the patient will benefit.
Ellen McDonald is doing frontier research about the role of Lyme disease, Borrelia infection in neurological illnesses. And he's doing it against substantial resistance in the traditional academic community.
I'm one man working alone, and there is great skepticism that my work has meaning. And I'm working hard to get some evidence to say that there is some meaning. And time will tell.
Two groups of doctors are pitted against each other over just about every aspect of Lyme disease, from the very definition of the illness to how it should be treated.
At the present time, the traditional medical community believes that there is basically only an acute form of the disease that is characterized in a soundbite as hard to get and easy to treat. For 10 or 15 years, there has been a second group of Lyme doctors that say, no, that's not true. Lyme disease can be a persistent chronic illness with many different symptoms. So the question that is posed at the present time is, does chronic Lyme disease really exist?
We are driving from Orlando up to North Carolina. It's a little over 500 miles, which is the closest spot that we have to Florida that actually has a clue about Lyme. My biggest fear is that treatments would be unsuccessful. She could continue to have a downward spiral. Neurologically, she could have things that are irreversible.
Yeah. Hey. Hey, how you doing? Hi. Okay.
While we're optimistic that Mandy will steadily improve, I'm skeptical that it's going to be smooth sailing. She's so fragile, and her central nervous system is so irritable. It doesn't take a lot to set her off. We have to figure out what's the best way to treat you intermittently, to get you to the best place so that your immune system is more in charge. So that's a tricky business.
He said, we're gonna have to do 6 to 8 months of antibiotic therapy. We'll have to put a catheter in, to your superior vena cava, and then you're gonna probably get worse. So I said, well, by worse, do you mean like emergency room worse? And he said, yeah.
Let's just do one at a time. Let's do this one, and this is as needed, right? Yeah. Lorazepam, and here are your supplements, that's fine. These are all fine. What I sense is that we're at the beginning of something that's going to be huge, just like I had that feeling in 20-some years ago with HIV. I've been seeing people from all over the country. They're sick, they've got a complex illness, they're being ignored. It's going to be an explosive area of medicine, and we're going to learn a lot about chronic illness. And I think that's going to help healthcare in general tremendously.
I have seen probably 30, maybe more doctors.
35 doctors.
About 15 doctors.
I've spent over $100,000 out of pocket.
$150,000.
$75,000 to $100,000.
I was misdiagnosed for 3 years. 5 years, 14 years.
15 years.
It's hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I'm guessing that my case, which could have been controlled with probably a single bottle of doxycycline, at the time I was bitten, probably would have cost something like $25 or $50 total, plus the doctor visit. As it is, I'm guessing that my case is now amounted to $75,000 to $100,000.
My concern is that the majority of the patients that I see here in this office, this very office, who come to me because they've been treated for chronic Lyme disease, is that they don't have any evidence of ever having had Lyme disease once. Ever. Not now, not a year ago, not 5 years ago. They didn't have the rash, they never had a positive blood test, they never had anything.
You see, class, my Lyme disease turned out to be psychosomatic.
Does that mean you're crazy? No, that means she was faking it.
No, actually, it was a little of both.
I was originally told at the very beginning that I had a very deep psychological problem.
People called me a hypochondriac.
They said I needed to see a psychiatrist.
You need to see a psychiatrist.
He told me, no, it's not Lyme. You don't have the rash. You are depressed.
You're faking it. You need to get mental help.
You're a teenager, get up and walk. She doesn't want to go to school, she's just depressed.
You think you're crazy, but I'm not. I know I'm not crazy. This thing screws you up big time.
Tally-ho. Let the drag begin. But where we are now is a town in Cape Cod, and Cape Cod is considered to be endemic for Lyme disease. Oh, I'm good. This is a male deer tick that we picked up from the ground on our very first 30-second drag. This is a deer tick nymph. This is the second stage. They'll feed on a host for 5 days, maybe, and that's how Lyme disease is transmitted. It just doesn't seem possible that this poppy seed-sized thing is going to make you bedridden, possibly for the rest of your life. Now we're trying for a deer tick female. That'll complete the trinity. And here we are. The trinity is complete. There are 2 females. Let's call them Thelma and Louise. And they're on the hunt. Well, there's another male. There's another nymph. We get another nymph. So our odds of getting Lyme disease here are going up. Despite years of education, the incidence of Lyme disease has been raised by 40% from last year. It's only going up.
This is all tick habitat, everything we're driving by here. And Lyme is turning up in states where it's never been known. I mean, I grew up in this part of the world and we didn't have a problem with Lyme disease that we know about. I'm convinced that in the long run that what we're going to learn is that we're seeing a process of ecological change. We're living in the largest extinction in 65 million years of other forms of life. While many species are dying out, viruses and bacteria are finding new opportunities. Warming climates, jet travel, and human expansion into wildlife habitats are favoring diseases that jump from animals to people. Diseases we're not prepared for.
It's possible that years ago the patients were only getting pure Lyme disease, and this might explain why the literature, there's such a disparity, where some people say, oh no, Lyme doesn't look like this. What we're now seeing is these ticks are containing multiple organisms. They're not just containing Borrelia burgdorferi, the organism that causes Lyme, but they're containing Ehrlichiosis, Babesia microti. It's a malaria-like organism. When you get Lyme and Ehrlichia and Babesia and Bartonella henselae, cat scratch fever, and Mycoplasma fermentans and viruses, the immune system gets overwhelmed. I'm not sure years ago all of these co-infections were present as they are now. Now the patients who are coming in to see me are multiply co-infected. They're much, much sicker, and it's because it's no longer just Lyme.
Ticks are very sensitive to dryness. Their bodies desiccate easily, and in dry weather they hide deep in mossy crevices on the barks of trees, or in the leaf litter, or in wood rat nests. Damp weather, however, makes them more active, and they come out and stand around the tips and branches and blades of grass by trails like hitchhikers at a freeway on-ramp. I want us to see clearly how things are really going with nature. We have not succeeded in developing any level of independence from it, nor, in fact, are our bodies in any way independent of it. We've always said, well, you know, sooner or later, some of the damage that we do to the earth can come back to people. But I think at some visceral level, we've expected we could evade it. And I think now maybe some of that bill is coming due, and we're beginning to see some ecological changes that are capable of invading people's bodies.
A spirochete is a parasite, like a virus is a parasite. It has to adapt to different environments. So you could have a very virulent disease-producing organism. You could have one that likes to go to the joints and doesn't want to penetrate and cause injury in the brain. You could have one that goes to the skin.
One of the hallmarks of the onset of untreated Lyme is a multi-system involvement. Different parts of the body, things changing and moving around. We might have a few weeks of body aches, and then you might have a few weeks of headaches, and a few weeks of real profound fatigue, and a few weeks of confusion, where you'll have pain in the large joints, and then it'll switch to the small joints. And then, you know, you're going to a neurologist, then you're going to a bone doctor, then you're going to a stomach specialist, then you're going to a counselor. And they get labeled as being crazy.
Severe headaches.
Cognitive problems.
Fatigue, headaches.
Cardiac arrhythmias.
It hurts on my foot.
My knees, my back.
I'm tired.
I hurt.
Involuntary movements.
Brain fog.
I lost the use of my right arm.
I became dyslexic.
I had hallucinations.
Blurred vision.
Light sensitivity.
It's a long laundry list.
The tests for Lyme disease were developed more than a decade ago. They were controversial back then, and in all this time, no better tests have been approved, even though almost everyone agrees there are problems with the current tests.
About 50% of people who actually have Lyme disease are negative in their test results with existing methods. If you're unlucky and you have real disease, but you test negative, your disease is still real and you still require treatment.
When I got diagnosed with Lyme, I thought, great. Oh, fantastic. Finally I'm gonna get rid of this thing. Course of antibiotics, I'll be good to go. I could never have imagined that it would be this long with the possibility of being forever. Go for Dana. I'm very scared of actually when the tour ends because I feel like my body will collapse. I'm a little afraid. You know, I'm definitely going on adrenaline, and the pain's getting worse and worse, and I'm getting, you know, more twitchy neurological things. This is a brilliant distraction. It's so weird, you know, when you're a kid, you think of what your life's gonna be, and you know, I'm 36, I'm gonna be 37. And by now, kids and a house, and you know, it's not what I expected. Lyme pushes you to the point of, what do you want? What are you living for? It's not enough just to be alive. I mean,
This is the height of the season for baseball, summer vacations, and Lyme disease. The disease is now being reported in almost every state, and it's reached epidemic levels in some parts of the Northeast.
The newest research indicates the tiny bacteria pose a special risk during pregnancy, since an expectant mother may not know she's infected.
We have examples of infection causing miscarriage. We have examples of infection causing death of the baby at the time of birth or shortly after birth.
I've had 4 miscarriages, 2 of which were positive for Lyme disease, and we had an 18-week loss that at 15 weeks was healthy, genetically fine, and at 18 weeks the loss was proven to come from the Lyme infection.
Elise came to me with Lyme disease, and it just so happened that as she was finishing up the treatment, she got pregnant. And we followed her with the pregnancy, and she was doing fine initially, and all of a sudden she miscarried.
2 weeks later, the OB came back and said, you were right, it was Lyme disease. The baby was infected, the fetus and the placenta were infected, Elise, and concluded that that's what took the life of this baby at 18 weeks.
In utero, fetal transmission of Lyme disease to a fetus is something that has been of concern to patients and physicians for many years. We've looked carefully at that. There have been numerous studies. There has not been one documented case of congenital Lyme disease.
Well, that's nonsense, plain and simple. And it's not only nonsense, there's significant peer-reviewed articles showing transmission transplacentally and at autopsies. It's just nonsense. How could that not be? It doesn't even stand up physiologically. It makes no sense.
Trying to have another baby has been very frightening. When I get excited about having a baby, I squish it. I don't let myself get excited because I'm so afraid of setting myself up for that disappointment again. And a day for me is like a lifetime. And every visit to the doctor is filled with fear. Every time I listen to that Doppler come down to my belly, I wonder, is there going to be a heartbeat today?
At this point, I have had many women who've gotten pregnant who've lost the baby. Or they give birth to a baby that has Lyme, and the babies don't have, the developmental growth may be off, their IQ may be lower, they may develop seizures or some other type of neurological problem, and it's not picked up because the mother was not known to have Lyme.
You can't imagine this. How could you? You just can't.
Hi, my name is Jared. Before my Lyme disease got so bad, I was able to talk. Now I have to use a communication device.
I wasn't a real healthy pregnant mom with him. Well, in retrospect, I realized that I was sick. I had Lyme disease, and I did not realize that that's what was going on. I knew something wasn't right from the time he was born. I knew it. I kept getting poo-pooed by the doctors. They said, just let him be and it'll all work out. And it didn't work out.
Ready? Okay.
At age 6, we got the news that he had brain damage, and they didn't really know why. They thought it was something that happened in utero, and that the damage was done, and then we were to just keep moving forward. But he didn't move forward. He kept moving backwards.
Get you a bend, bud.
Lyme disease happened to be everywhere around us by then. It was as if every neighbor was coming down with it, and it was like hitting me from every direction, as if, you know, wake up, dummy, you're not paying attention. You know, there's Lyme disease everywhere. There's a gentleman who lives right up on the hill up here, and his previous wife passed away. She had Lyme disease, and now he's remarried, and his new wife has Lyme disease.
This man here was very ill from Lyme disease. In the house over here to your right, those people had it, and same with the lady that lives here. She has it.
I put a lot of faith in the doctors. I believe them. I want to just shake them and say, how many more kids are you going to let go untreated because you're not recognizing what's happening here?
I've never seen a child who's had late-stage neurologic Lyme disease. We just don't see late neurologic disease in children.
I used to do ballet, and I was in the Nutcracker a bunch of times. That time of year was always really crazy and running around, going to rehearsals and stuff, but I loved it.
Her ankle was bothering her. Then her right knee blew up, and they tapped into it, and they found that she had late-stage Lyme, and it was in her brain.
She just went downhill very fast. All of a sudden, she couldn't pick up a knife, pick up a fork, couldn't write with a pencil. And this all transpired in the time frame of overnight.
They insisted that she's making it up and that she was going to have to go on psychiatric medication if she didn't stop it. Rock bottom to me was that summer before we went to see Dr. Jones. She couldn't hold her head up. She couldn't sit up. She couldn't talk anymore. And not knowing if they were going to keep her on the medication, because they kept saying, no, only 28 days. And I said, well, I'm going to Connecticut, and I'm going to see this other doctor. And them fighting me and saying, well, he's controversial. And something in me just kept saying, no, you're going.
The thing that gives me most joy in treating the children with Lyme disease is seeing them get well and cured. I don't consider it a job. I consider it to be more or less like a calling than anything. My practice consists of over 9,000 children from every state in America, from South America, from almost every province in Canada, and from every continent abroad. The practice is growing at the rate of 5 to 10 new encounters per day. They have very complex, serious illnesses. However, it's nice to see them get well.
Some of the Lyme literate physicians are practicing medicine that is widely outside of the standards of medical care. The small group of physicians feel that one can diagnose Lyme disease on clinical grounds alone, not necessarily relying on any laboratory data. And then furthermore, long-term antibiotics are the right treatment. That has never been shown in any double-blind, controlled, randomized trial.
I've worked here for 8 years, and I've seen many patients come and go, and I've seen the success he's had in his treatment regimen. Yes, we do treat aggressively, but I think that's what works.
In a way, it's like the perfect storm of diseases because of the timing of a couple different events in the history of medicine. 1980, the United States said it was okay for government institutions and universities to patent and profit from live organisms. So the Lyme disease organism was discovered in 1981, and all of a sudden there was the equivalent of an Oklahoma land grab, people looking under their microscopes, patenting pieces of the organism. So the people that are credited for being the Lyme disease experts no longer shared information about a new, really dangerous pathogen. They hoarded the information because they wanted to protect future profits.
You have professors, especially in the biosciences, are trying to take their discoveries, often made on the federal nickel, and take them private. They patent them, they start firms. What's commercializable is driving the research agenda in too many cases, not what's medically necessary and what's medically useful.
The other thing that happened was the rise of managed care. Insurance companies and HMOs realized that if they can get researchers in universities to define diseases and write guidelines for diseases a certain way, then they could help manage the escalating medical costs. And really what this means is the people who previously protected public health, so like the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, and the NIH, and universities who didn't have any commercial interests, all of a sudden they were partners with Big Pharma, and their motivations completely changed. We no longer had oversight and checks and balances in our scientific system in the US. It was rife with conflicts, and just now, 20 years later, we're beginning to see what happens when you have unchecked conflicts in medical care.
Okay, today is July 5th, and Mandy's having a little bit of an episode.
It's a feeling of being trapped within your own body.
So it's like being wrapped up real tight like a mummy. So you can't move anything. And then having tape across your mouth. So you can't say anything. But reality is, you gotta kill them. You gotta kill the little bugs because they're taking over. No, I was okay. I was adapting my life to what was going on. Now I want it back. So it's a war.
It got so bad after the tour because I really did some damage. Wasn't willing to admit it to myself or anyone. I'm in Seattle, Washington to see Dr. Klinghardt, one of the foremost specialists on Lyme disease. This is great. I feel horrible. It's perfect. He's the one that I respect the most. He's the one that I trust. I've purposely not let myself fall into the whole trap of doctor after doctor and treatment after treatment because I'm waiting for the right one.
You guys ready? Hold back, guys.
This guy. Really?
Glad to see you too. So talk to me first. Give me all the information I need to be a better doctor to you.
So how do I explain 7 years of...
Okay, so you've been ill for 7 years.
Yeah.
How old are you now?
37.
What have you done in terms of treatment?
When I found out, I started antibiotics. I did 6 months and I was so ill. And I just didn't see it as an answer.
Lyme disease is one of the many microbes that has entered our system. And I feel as a physician that things are getting to a degree that's serious. We're watching other mammals die out and kind of think, well, I'm glad it's not me. However, as our environment becomes increasingly polluted, so do our bodies. And then will grow the bugs in us that are not compatible with human life anymore. So you have a tremendous amount of inflammation in the gut. The Lyme disease leads to a suppression of the immune system, and then you grow these things in you that we're always exposed to. So I'm just going to first do just a few neurological tests on you. So you have a little bit borderline Babinski reflex. There's an upper motor neuron sign. It means you're sort of that significant levels of toxicity in spinal cord or brain, which is a way for me to stage how close you are to possibly developing like a more serious thing like MS. You know, older people often get Parkinson's after they've had undiagnosed Lyme, or Alzheimer's. Younger people tend to, especially women, tend to get MS.
That really struck me today, how much I've been in denial of this illness. I mean, and I've been feeling really twitchy and just shaky, a lot of neurological stuff that it's like I can't deny it anymore. It's becoming very visible, so I think I'm just in time.
Yeah, there's a warning sign. This is not a mild situation. You're sort of like, you have to do, within the next few months, you have to resolve the issues that you can resolve. Yeah? You have to promise that to me.
I'm ready.
Yeah?
Yeah. It feels like just emergency. It's just a panic in my body that I've learned to just walk around with. Yeah, this is Dana. I am moving into 314. I finally feel like I can let go of it and give it to somebody else to take. There's someone to take my hand and get me through it. I really felt like that today. I can't believe I moved to Seattle. This is so crazy.
The spirochete that causes Lyme disease is Borrelia burgdorferi and related Borrelia. The model that I have used to try to understand all of the possible things that Lyme disease can do is the syphilis model. Stokes, Modern Clinical Syphilology, 1945, W.B. Saunders publisher. It gets into every organ system of the body, and there are chapters on manifestations in the skin, manifestations in dead babies, manifestations in the bone, manifestations in the brain, and particularly dementia, because dementia and syphilis was general paresis, and general paresis is as close as you could come to a carbon copy of Alzheimer's disease. The diseases are exactly the same. If a spirochete, syphilis, could cause dementia, why couldn't the Borrelia spirochete, over a long, long, long period of time, cause Alzheimer's disease? I extracted DNA from 10 Alzheimer brains that came from the Harvard University Brain Bank. These are the Harvard brain DNA extracts in this tube. Using molecular methods, I was able to find the DNA of the spirochete, which causes Lyme disease, in 7 out of 10 of the Alzheimer brain specimens that we received from Harvard. That's incredible. The results of the experiment could not have been predicted in anybody's imagination when 7 Alzheimer brains gave me essentially the same thing, which is part spirochetal, part human, linked up in one molecule. I about fell off my chair. If my dream comes true someday, that will redefine the practice of medicine. That will redefine the lives of millions of people. Since spirochetes are the cause of neurodegenerative diseases and syphilis, could it be that this spirochetal infection, Lyme disease, is partly or wholly responsible for some of the neurologic degenerative diseases we face in this century? Alzheimer's, Lou Gehrig's disease, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis. Those are named conditions for which no cause is now known.
We never had, in the last 5 years, a single MS patient, a single ALS patient, a single Parkinson's patient who did not test positive for Borrelia burgdorferi. Not a single one.
About 3 years ago, I became ill with the disease that was ultimately thought to be ALS or Lou Gehrig disease, and had prepared to die within about 2 years' time. My neurologist tells me that I was progressing so rapidly that without the diagnosis of Lyme disease and antibiotics, I would have continued to decline, losing strength, eventually becoming bedbound, eventually unable to talk or swallow or breathe, and would have died in a matter of a couple of years, just like anybody else with ALS. So I was started on high doses of intravenous antibiotics, only to see what would happen with no guarantees. To our amazement, within a month, my energy improved, so instead of being exhausted in an hour, I could be up and about and active for 4 or 5 hours. We're now 2 years out, and I find that if I go off of the antibiotics, I lose stamina and I'm not yet back to my full self. But the change is absolutely dramatic.
I said, I'm not getting tested. I said, there's no way. There's no way I have Lyme because I've been told by the best doctors that I have Parkinson's. My name is Ben Petrick. Baseball was kind of like my life. I went from being a gifted athlete to, there's times when it's hard to put a shirt on. I've been out of the game now for almost 2 years. When you're diagnosed with a disease like Parkinson's, it's like a slow death sentence. That's kind of what you feel like. There's no cure for it. It's just kind of a slow deterioration of your former self. Recently, in the past month, I've been tested for Lyme disease, and a test came back positive, and so I've gone and seen Dr. Martz in Colorado Springs. We're scared. My wife and I are sitting there going, do we want to do this? Because they're talking about sticking something in my vein that's going to go into my big artery, it's going to go into my heart. I'm going, what? So, you know, I said to Dr. Martz, and Dr. Martz is phenomenal, and his story is just miraculous. And I said, should I do this? And he said, Ben, if you were part of my family, I would chain you down and not let you leave here until you had this done. Six months into the Lyme treatment, it's without a doubt better. I mean, there's no question in my mind. But I feel like I'm getting back to being myself compared to what I have been in the past. I think it's night and day.
What I'm doing right now is sitting in my wheelchair. Sean doesn't like to videotape it. So we've gotten a couple tips about that because I think it's important for other people to see this.
There are times when I feel like I need to get away. Not that I'm trying to run away from her, but that...
It's too much.
Sometimes I need to go and do the things that I used to do before this started just to feel like, okay, that life is still there. You know, I mean, just like her,
That feeling's there for me too, and I just can't.
I know.
We were told it was going to be a long road. That doesn't mean that I don't worry about it driving a wedge. It doesn't mean that I don't think that maybe at some point Sean might change his mind.
I'm extremely nervous about having this child. All the tests that we have to do, the fear that he'll come out and he won't be able to breathe, or there'll be something that's happened from the Lyme infection that we don't know about. It is very, very scary.
Push, Elise, push. Here comes your baby.
Placenta sample. Here.
like to welcome you to John F. Kennedy International Airport, New York. The local time here in New York is 9:30 a.m.
Well, here we are in East Hampton, New York, a place I probably never would have seen if I hadn't gotten Lyme disease. I've come here all the way from California to see one of the top Lyme specialists in the world. And I've been coming here for the last 4 years. Are you nervous riding with me? You should be. As a park ranger before Lyme, I was a highly competent person. What Lyme did to me is it sort of removed my ability to multitask. You know, I can sort of do one thing at a time if I really focus on it. See, we're not where we should be right now. Do you notice this? That's a really bad sign. It's frustrating, you know. It's frustrating to be this far down the road. Now it's been almost 8 years, and to still be not back to normal.
When did you start the combination therapy? Last year, right?
Yeah, I've been on it for a year.
Are you still improving or have you hit a plateau?
You know, the truth is, I've hit a plateau.
How much antibiotic is enough? How many symptoms that are still present reflect an active ongoing infection versus just damage that's going to be there forever? And we have different things we can do. One thing is you can be objectively retested. We could consider adding another drug. A third option would be just the opposite. Give you a drug holiday, stop things, see where you stand. The last time you tried to do that, you definitely got worse. This time it may not be. We've seen that a certain subgroup of patients, and it's not a small subgroup, it's a lot of them, do need ongoing open-ended maintenance antibiotic therapy. Somehow the spirochete can learn to live within the body and not be killed. It can hide from the immune system, it can hide from the antibiotics, and both at the same time. And there are patients who sometimes are on open-ended years of therapy because of this very problem.
We have not been able to demonstrate the persistence of the bacteria. So to treat for months and months is really based on guesswork, on conjecture, and not based on any scientific data.
If I had not been able to find doctors who would soak me in antibiotics for years, you wouldn't be talking to the guy that you're talking to right now. The folk myth is somehow that antibiotics are bad for you. I just have to say they're certainly not bad for you if you've got a fatal infection.
This disease, it's taken over my whole life.
It's been a horrible journey.
Every day driving home, I would think of driving a car off the road or something like that.
I said to my mom, you know, it would be okay with me if I didn't wake up this time.
I said, God, take me home tonight. It was not even a request, it was a demand.
What's gonna happen to me? What's gonna happen to me? I don't wanna die.
I am scared. I'm very sad because I don't know what to do.
I'm going downhill, gradually down, 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 down.
The worst part is knowing that you're just not a normal person.
Chronic Lyme disease. It's kind of the disease du jour. There's no evidence that I can find to support the concept that there is a chronic Borrelia infection after treatment. That kind of situation has been referred to as post-Lyme syndrome or post-Lyme symptoms. Those symptoms may be due to the aches and pains of kind of daily living.
The Infectious Diseases Society of America just published their Lyme disease diagnosis and treatment guidelines, and it's been a huge disaster for the Lyme disease community. They say that Lyme is easy to treat and easy to cure. They're saying that 2 weeks typically will cure most cases of Lyme. And they say that chronic Lyme doesn't exist. If people have symptoms beyond 1 2 to 4 week dose of antibiotics, they have something else, and they send them to a psychiatrist or give them some pain meds or some steroids and send them away.
If you look at the new IDSA guidelines, it's a very threatening document. It's very restrictive. So it almost was designed with a purpose in mind to restrict the treatment of Lyme.
A handful of people are pretty much the gatekeepers for information about this disease. Out of 400 references that they posted at the back of the guidelines, half of them were based on articles that the panelists or people in their labs had actually written. So it's not like they went through and looked at the whole body of Lyme research to come up with the best recommendations. They looked at a small group of articles, about half of which were written by themselves.
These guidelines are based on the best scientific evidence that from more than 25 years of study.
It completely ignores a worldwide body of literature that is in contradiction to what they're saying.
We're not going to ignore good science, but the science isn't there.
We had begun deliberations, and we were going to go over the late and chronic stage. We never got to discuss late and chronic Lyme disease. There seemed to be pressure from the IDSA to put out something, even though we couldn't agree. So what happened was, Dr. Wormser did take over the chairmanship on the guidelines for Lyme disease, and we never met again. We just said, here are the guidelines, and you can sign them and agree or not.
They're written in almost legalese terms, like this can be a document used in court cases, maybe against physicians, or maybe for insurance companies to justify cutting off treatment to their patients because these are the guidelines.
Really, those guidelines reflected the idea of 1 or 2 people, but they've been misused by insurance companies who don't want to pay for treatments because that particular guideline says we don't know if chronic Lyme disease exists.
Well, the insurance company has refused to pay $10,000 worth of bills having to do with my trips to see Dr. Burscano. They have now required me to see another doctor. This particular doctor apparently is a fellow who works mostly for the insurance company. What he'll do will be to cite the IDSA position that there's no such thing as chronic Lyme disease to support a conclusion that the insurance company's already made about me. They don't want to pay.
Rather than make the assumption that 2 to 4 weeks of antibiotics is enough, where did anybody get that idea from in infectious disease? Tuberculosis is not treated in 2 to 4 weeks. Hepatitis, a year to treat that? HIV, indefinitely? So we're not talking about new concepts. We're talking about concepts that have not been, for whatever reason, applied.
This doctor's controversial diagnosis and treatment of Lyme disease with powerful intravenous drugs could very well cost him his medical license.
The evidence will show that Dr. Jimsek believed the IDSA guidelines to be flawed, to be wrong.
I respect the IDSA tremendously. I belong to the IDSA. The Lyme philosophy is run by about 12 people who have been doing the same 12 people for the last 15 years, and they haven't really changed anything. I tried to influence the IDSA through a series of letters with the president and the chairman of the guidelines committee. We pleaded with them to open up the process about Lyme guidelines.
He's been working really hard for the last year to try and get the IDSA board to listen to his suggestions for the treatment of chronic Lyme. And now he's before a medical board review, and it makes you wonder, you know, is this retaliation?
Furthermore, for each of these patients, Dr. Jimsek prescribed a course of not oral, but intravenous antibiotics to be administered to the patients for months on end.
Long-term antibiotics provide no additional benefit. And it's not that this is safe. There are many complications to long-term antibiotic therapy.
I was a patient of his for 7.5 years, diagnosed with Lyme's disease, wholeheartedly believed him, and never had Lyme's disease.
My wife did not sign up to be a test subject. She was told she could be cured for the disease that she supposedly had.
3 years ago, you wouldn't have thought she'd live another 2 months. He literally saved her life, no question about it.
If I hadn't seen Dr. Jemsek, if he wasn't available, I don't know that I'd be here talking to you.
If Dr. Jemsek doesn't get cleared, there's a message that's going to be sent to the other doctors in North Carolina that it's not safe to take a Lyme patient on and treat them. We can't have that happen. I don't know what we would do.
It is difficult for doctors who want to stand up and help these patients because it is a political disease and an economic disease as much as it is a bacterial-borne infection.
My office was stormed by the Board of Nurse Examiners.
I got a letter around 2000 saying that I was a subject of an investigation.
A complaint went in from a physician to the Virginia Board of Medicine stating that I was following unusual practices in treating Lyme disease patients.
Here we are in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we're on day 2 of the Jemsek trial.
Oh, we're going.
Dr. Jemsek's license is suspended for 1 year, stayed in the conditions to be determined. That concludes the hearing in this matter.
A Charlotte doctor must surrender his medical license for the way he treats Lyme disease. Less than an hour ago, the state medical board ruled that Dr. Joseph Jemsek acted inappropriately when treating some patients. The board suspended his license for 1 year.
I thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Medical boards don't act on their own. They need a complaint to initiate an investigation. And we've been told by the medical boards that the great majority of complaints don't come from doctors or patients, but they come from insurance companies trying to get rid of doctors who cost them a lot of money.
There has been for many years a controversy within the medical community about how best to diagnose and treat Lyme disease. We allege that Dr. Jones prescribed an antibiotic to a patient he did not know and had never examined.
As a mom, my kids were sick. I left no stone unturned. I finally found somebody that recognized what their problem might be. It was treated, in my opinion, appropriately, and my kids are better now because of it.
This whole thing is kind of ridiculous, I think. It was really nothing more than a witch hunt on behalf of my ex-husband. He called me and he said he was going to lodge a complaint against every doctor that I took the children to unless I agreed not to bill him for half of the medical care.
How could my dad have done this? He used to go, "You don't have Lyme disease. Dr. Jones is just making it up so he can get money." And I thought, you know what? No, he isn't, because I was always sick. And then when he told me and my brother and my family that we had Lyme disease and we got treated for Lyme disease, we got so much better.
Did you testify contrary to Dr. Jones's opinion in a criminal case in the last several years?
Yes.
Did you ever call him a nut in public?
Patients develop physical complaints.
but it's got a psychological basis.
Dr. Jones is the best pediatric Lyme doctor in the United States. So the implications for me is that if my son's Lyme comes back, or if we contract it again, then you'll be taking away the one person that can truly help us. What kind of response would you get if this was a kid with cancer? Everybody and their mother would say that this is inhumane.
Dr. Jones is not the heart of the problem. I think the opposition, they're going to use him as an example if they can, perhaps to frighten other doctors so that they won't want to get involved in care.
I was reviewed by the investigators for 4 years.
As long as I'm not too well known, it's okay to do what I do, but if I would become very well known or very outspoken, I think that I would probably lose my medical license.
It got to the point where I would tell people, don't tell the office you're coming in because of Lyme.
Just leave us alone. Just let's do our work. If you don't want to treat that stuff, that's fine. But you can't make it go away. It's not going away.
Dear Lord and Heavenly Father, thank you for this meal and help it nourish our bodies and help us advance your kingdom. And just let the truth prevail from it, Dr. Jones, and help him help others. In Jesus' name, Christ, amen.
We're here today to remember Brett Paul,
Doris Grade,
Robert Baird,
Jerry Teitelbaum-Fossing.
I think it really points out how dangerous this illness is. We're the heartland of the nation, and our people are dying here from Lyme disease.
My son was 31 years old, and he died from Lyme disease because no one would treat him.
I keep wondering what else I could have done. Should I have taken her to Europe? Should I have taken her somewhere where somebody would have done something? But we don't seem to care in this country. They just didn't try to help. When we tried to get medication for her, it was almost impossible because the medical profession is afraid to give medication for this.
If I was asked whether Lyme disease could be fatal, I would say not in my experience and not suggested by any of the existing literature.
My husband died 2 months ago of Lyme disease. It's specifically on his death certificate.
By the time that they figure it out, it's too late.
The last words my daughter spoke to me, her last words to us, "Mommy, they're gonna kill me," and they did.
I am one of the many that will speak for her now. She shouldn't have had to die. I'm angry at the fact that there's nobody there to help me. I'm angry at the fact that this disease is being ignored. I'm angry at the fact that there's a Hippocratic oath out there that these doctors are supposed to heal me, and they ignored me. And they put a price on my life which was nothing. Nobody was there to help me. And instead, they blamed it on me by saying it was all in my head.
We were having dinner, just, watching TV, and she started having a reaction. It was a mild seizure at first, and it progressively got worse. She was having a problem breathing, and then stopped breathing altogether. The first doctor that we met with, first statement was, Lyme doesn't do this, that's not what you have. Three of the doctors all asked if she's seeing a psychiatrist because they all just assumed it was in her head.
My body had been losing ability for a long time. Cognitive function, physical ability to do things, and I'd been keeping it down, you know, working around it, adjusting my life. So, you know what? I don't want to hear it. And I'm sorry, but I have been dealing with it, and now we have been dealing with it. That's 10 years. That's a long time to be patient.
I mean, it's frustrating to hear doctor after doctor after doctor say either A, Lyme doesn't exist, or Lyme doesn't do this, or, you know, well, what you're experiencing isn't Lyme. It's almost like they've been trained or programmed that this is what they're supposed to say.
That's really madness. You know, there's something wrong. I don't hear it any other disease, never heard it in my life. So there's something funny. I don't know what that something funny is.
Attorney General Blumenthal of Connecticut has taken the historic move of starting an investigation into the panel members who wrote the Infectious Diseases Society of America Lyme treatment guidelines. He believes that they have conflicts that may be corrupting their advice.
Our investigation concerns whether the antitrust laws have been violated, purposefully or not, by these guidelines. They may restrict consumer choice with tremendous implications, not only for patient care, but also the economics of insurance coverage.
Ideally, authors of medical guidelines should have no financial conflicts when they make their recommendations. But if you look at the current IDSA guidelines authors, 6 of 14 of them or their universities hold patents associated with Lyme disease or its co-infections. 4 of the 14 have received funding from Lyme or co-infection test kit manufacturers. 4 have been paid by insurance companies to write Lyme policy guidelines or serve as consultants in legal cases. And 9 of the 14 authors or their universities have received money from Lyme disease vaccine manufacturers.
The fact that 9 out of 14 authors have a direct conflict of interest with somebody who's involved in manufacturing products for any aspect of the disease is completely outrageous. The Infectious Disease Society of America should establish a hard and fast rule that the people who serve on guideline writing committees not have any ties to any manufacturer that has a stake in the outcome of those guidelines. Period. End of story.
There are a lot of people in the academic community, I think, that know these people are wrong, but no one will speak up. So, you know, at what point will people say the emperor has no clothes? You know, when will the voice of the people finally reach a level where the truth will come out? I mean, I think the truth will eventually come out, but how many more people are going to suffer before the truth comes out?
As citizens, we ought to be astonished and alarmed.
Every year, it is thousands and thousands of people suffering.
This is a total disgrace. Right to the IDSA. Chronic Lyme disease exists.
Good afternoon, everybody. Continuing hearings on the case of Dr. Charles Jones.
He had their records, which did not confirm the history that the mother had given. He'd been told that Nevada providers saw no reason to prescribe an antibiotic. Nonetheless, he prescribed for both children.
I hate to sound conspiratorial, but I think I have a right to be. I think that would be advantageous for me as a Lyme literate physician and the only pediatrician in the world who treats Lyme patients to be out of the picture.
There's no charge that these patients were harmed. In fact, how do we get past this big elephant in the living room that these patients were treated successfully and are now doing very well?
I'm 78 years old. The worst scenario is lose my license. I don't think they're going to let it go. I know that.
We all love Dr. Jones. He's like a father to me. If they succeed in taking his license away, I just don't feel that he's gonna feel like he needs to be here anymore. And that's very sad to me.
I don't know where my daughter would be without Dr. Jones.
We call him the Lyme Pope.
I was probably the 30th individual who had been called before a medical board for treating persistent Lyme disease. They decided to suspend my license with stay, which means that I was allowed to practice, but the damage was done. Within a few weeks, Blue Cross Blue Shield in North Carolina canceled our contract, and then they sued me for $100 million. Financially, I've lost essentially everything. I've lost my clinic. I've sold the building. In a couple of months, I'll be closing the practice.
They had the vision loss, and they were starting to lose their hearing there.
They were really young when you were losing it.
Christy, my oldest child, died 6.5 years ago from Lyme disease. She was 19 years old. Courtney is 25 years old.
Can you say doctor? Say doctor. Doctor. I'm glad somebody stepped in and helped you. That you found the right people. Yeah.
Hey, sweet.
Good, how are you?
You made significant progress. I'm delighted with the fact that your multiple neurologic symptoms are so much better and that you have control of your body. You can live in your own skin. From someone who came unable to swallow and you know, an altered bedridden, altered sense of smell and uncontrolled tremors and seizures and couldn't stand up and gosh.
I'm looking good.
You're looking good.
Well, my greatest fear is that, you know, like some of the couples out there who have Lyme, that both of us will be impacted by it and that he would have gotten it from me. You know, he's complained about a lot of aches and pains.
I'm not old, but I'm getting older, and there's things that I'm feeling that probably happen to everybody. Like one of my eyes right now, I gotta go to a vision guy because one of my eyes is blurred out, and I've always had 20/10 vision. I mean, all of a sudden this eye, and it was like an overnight thing that suddenly I'm having issues with blurry vision on one of my eyes, getting headaches, which I account towards the blurry vision, but bottom line is...
Mono-like symptoms. He goes horizontal, he's out.
just feeling lethargic. I won't tell you that it's not in the back of my mind that it is possible.
Lyme is a distant cousin to syphilis, which is obviously sexually transmitted. Now, if Lyme were found to indeed be a sexually transmitted disease, it would change the landscape of the whole argument.
The only way that Lyme disease is transmitted is through the bite of an Ixodes tick.
We know about Lyme disease. It's something that we have a good handle on. That's really the bottom line.
Jared is a very happy baby. He just wakes up happy, laughs all day, giggles. He just loves life. Jared's test came back positive for the Lyme antibody, which means he may be infected. He may end up getting very sick someday because of it. But we're very lucky right now. He's doing well. I don't want to say that. I don't want to say he has Lyme disease. I don't like to use that term right now. Not yet.
The controversy in Lyme disease is a shameful affair because the whole thing is politically tainted. Money goes to people that have, for the past 30 years, produced the same thing. Nothing.
Lyme disease is a significant disease we don't have a cure for. And we don't have accurate testing. That should scare people. So how do you know if you have it? How do you know how to fix it? How do you know what to do? And by the time you're so disabled by the disease, you're in a panic state. You want help, it doesn't matter. You'll pay anything to get your health back. And the fact that doctors who are willing to help you and are legitimate doctors willing to put their license, their life on the line to help you, and that it even has to come to that, is scary.
Dr. Biascano, good luck in whatever you do. You're a wonderful doctor.
Well, recently I decided to close my practice. The political climate for physicians treating Lyme is very difficult nowadays.
This is a doctor who was hauled before the New York's Medical Review Board, I think on 2 occasions, and threatened with removal of his license.
You know, I look at these charts and I think of the people who've gone blind. They've lost their hearing. They are in wheelchairs. I mean, it's terrible. And especially because so many of them, it could have been prevented if they were properly treated in the beginning. That's what kills me. Man, it was such a waste. Look at all this. Such a waste of people's lives, of money, resources, time. And all it takes is knowledge. I bet you that if these people, all of them, had seen a Lyme literate doctor in the very beginning of their illness, I'm sure more than half, if not more than 3/4 of them, would never have gotten to that stage, ever.
Lyme can go in so many directions. There's the people that are hit really hard, that are actually crippled and handicapped and very visibly ill. And then there's people like myself that, you know, are invisibly ill, like the walking dead. Now there is a possibility of getting my body back. I'm feeling the best I've felt probably in years. I feel like my brain is back. I have more energy. You know, I feel much clearer. This is the first bit of hope I've had. Real hope, and for this whole time. it's almost like I started building a bridge to the other side, and I'm kind of was going that way. And now I'm looking back like, oh, I'm gonna go walk back into my body and start again. It's daunting. I met a lovely gentleman who's been really supportive, and I don't know, for the first time it feels so good to have someone's support. I don't have to go it alone anymore.
I can't tell you how excited I am. This is just a marvelous, marvelous new concept. Up until this point, we had the hunch that the bug had to be hiding somewhere in the body in a form which we couldn't really put our fingers on and we couldn't really find with the microscope. One night as I was looking at the culture of Borrelia, I saw a large colony of organisms protected by a gel-like substance. And as I was reviewing the pictures, it became clear that this was very reminiscent of what they call a biofilm. The idea of a Borrelia biofilm is very, very powerful because the biofilm explains in that one word why some cases of Lyme disease are chronic, why they're hard to treat, and why after antibiotic treatment they may relapse. Because biofilms are by definition chronic, difficult to treat, and capable of relapse. It's absolutely revolutionary. The major medical journals have published that chronic Lyme disease is not real and it's a psychosomatic condition. The biofilm model dismantles that entire argument. The patients were right all along. It's a great opportunity to say, aha, they were right. And they were right. They were right.
This disease nearly destroyed my family. It got really bad. It got really bad. I'm happy to have my family still. I'm thankful to them for staying with me. I'm back. I'm glad to be here. If I'd stopped treatment after even the first year, I never would have made it anywhere close to where I am now. Mind you, I had to fight for what I got. In the current system, I get maybe a month of treatment, that's it. Everything you have is what you're going to have for the rest of your life. And yet all the improvement that I've experienced happens after the third year of treatment. And then there's the phase where I start to get my life back. And that's the phase I'm in now. And it's like magic. I'm so glad to be here. I can't even say.